Good afternoon, for joining us. You can help me. I believe I have muted everyone's microphone, but if you would just double check that your microphone has been muted, we will go ahead and get started. So you have been added to the training session today because your institution has recognized you as an initiator for our new supplier onboarding process and program called PaymentWorks. We are excited to be working with PaymentWorks here in the near future and hope that you will see many positives from the program today. Okay, so my name is Jessie Ansley, and I'm a part of the Shared Services Supplier team. On the call also today with the Shared Services Supplier team is Allison Renfro, Abe Kitchens, Victoria Taylor, and Selwyn May. We do also have Jason Beitzel with us from ITS, and he will be giving us our PaymentWorks introduction here shortly. Just a few housekeeping items for you today. This Teams meeting is being recorded and the archive and presentation will be distributed following the meeting. You will get the presentation along with the recording. If you have any questions as we move along the presentation, please don't hesitate to chat your questions. We will have a time of review at the end. Okay, and on our agenda today, we are going to be doing a PaymentWorks introduction. We're going to go over the initiator process. We're going to have a live demonstration of the initiator process in PaymentWorks. I'll talk about help and troubleshooting, and we will go over our questions and review. So at this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Jason Beitzel from ITS and allow him the time to give the PaymentWorks introduction.
Thanks, Jason. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Beitzel. I work over at ITS. We've been partnering with Shared Services as well as the System Office to implement PaymentWorks. And so we know that some of you probably have never heard of PaymentWorks, don't know anything about it or while we're doing it. So I wanted to tell you just a little bit about what PaymentWorks is. So PaymentWorks is a supplier onboarding solution. It's designed to do a couple main things. One is to improve data accuracy, and the second is to prevent vendor fraud. So right now we know that there's fraud. Vendor fraud happens at most institutions at one time or another over the past several years. And a lot of times we can't get that money back. You know, sometimes once fraud happens, that money hits a wrong bank account and it's transferred to another bank account, and it's all of a sudden we can't get that money back. And so PaymentWorks really steps up to ensure that any supplier that is onboarded through the PaymentWorks application, they will cover any type of fraud that happens for that supplier. So if all of a sudden we have a large payment go to a wrong bank account for a supplier that they sent us that information for, they would be on the hook to reimburse the institutions for that vendor fraud. So that's one big thing that PaymentWorks does. They are going to be integrated into our Georgia First Financials application, which means that a lot of the processes that Shared Services Center is doing now, the role is changing some. They'll be doing a lot more within the PaymentWorks application, but we'll actually feed that data over into the PeopleSoft financials from PaymentWorks. All right, Jesse. Thank you. So what is PaymentWorks? So high level, what this is we know that a lot of the information, there's some risk right now in how information is added to the system. Forms are being sent to Shared Services Center. They contain sensitive information. Things are not always as secure as they possibly could be. And even if everything is sent securely, that's not to say that we won't accidentally type in a wrong number on a bank account or on a tax ID number, things like that. And so what PaymentWorks does is we'll actually, we're going to demo this today, but we will initiate a vendor invitation through the PaymentWorks application. Once that is done, an institution approver will approve that invitation request. So if I'm the initiator and I say I need to set up Staples as a new supplier in PaymentWorks, it would then go to our system office to approve that request, whoever the invitation approver is. So once that is approved by the system office to say, yes, we do want to do business with Staples, and we don't see them set up as a supplier in PaymentWorks yet, that PaymentWorks would send that invitation to Staples and say, Staples, we need you to create a PaymentWorks account. As soon as PaymentWorks creates that account, they complete that vendor registration. They'll have a form that they need to fill out, basically, that has all of the USG specific information that we're requesting. It's very similar to the forms that y'all are sending to Shared Services Center now. It includes vendor information, vendor name, address, tax ID number. If there's 1099 information, it'll include that, as well as bank account details for suppliers being paid electronically. So PaymentWorks, what they do is they then have a bank account validation team. They'll verify bank account information data that the supplier entered on that form. They'll check for sanctions against that supplier. They'll confirm that the emails they gave us are accurate, that there really is a Staples at the address that they provided to us, that the address is a valid address, that their tax ID number, really does match up to Staples. So there's a lot of things that PaymentWorks is doing on their side to ensure this data is being provided is accurate. So once that happens, the request is going to go to Shared Services Center, who is our vendor approver. And so SSC approves every new vendor that comes through PaymentWorks. And so once this feeds through, SSC reviews the data, says, yes, everything looks good. If they see a problem, if they say, you know what, there's an issue with this data, I need to send this back to the supplier, they have the option to reject that and go back and forth with the supplier to say, you know what, you said that you're paid this method, but really we see we're paying you now electronically. Can you send us your bank account information also to ensure we continue, to pay you correctly? And so once they get all those type of issues worked out, Shared Services Center would approve. And then we're going to have an electronic feed basically of this data from PaymentWorks directly into PeopleSoft Financials. So we schedule programs that will load all the different vendor tables with the information. So you think about vendor and vendor address and vendor contact and vendor withholding and vendor bank account and all these different tables that contain this vendor information. We'll populate all that automatically. Once that's done, and say Staples in this example is set up in PeopleSoft Financials as a supplier, we'll notify PaymentWorks. We'll say Staples has been set up. Their share vendor number 38,000 as an example. Once we send that to PaymentWorks, they'll update that supplier to connected. As soon as the supplier's connected, they will be able to review all the payments made from our institutions that are on our share supplier platform. So as Staples is paid, we'll send a nightly file to PaymentWorks that has all the different institutions' payments to Staples, and Staples doesn't have to call each school's AP department to say, is this invoice been paid yet? What's the status on this? They'll have all that information directly in PaymentWorks. So we're really hoping that's going to save some time for everybody involved in that process. So what Staples is set up, step 12 here is basically if they needed to update their profile information. Let's say they need to add an additional address. They need to add a new contact. They need to change something. They need to change their bank account information, things like that. They can do all those type of things within PaymentWorks at any time after they're connected. Once they do that, of course, PaymentWorks is going to validate that information again, and they will send it to Shared Services Center for approval. If everything looks good, SSC says, yes, we approve, and then that will also feed over into PeopleSoft automatically. So that's just kind of a high-level description of the process. I know y'all probably still have some questions on that, but we're going to demo that for you. And so hopefully it'll all make more sense very soon.
Thank you, Jason.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to start from the beginning of logging in for you to get to PaymentWorks. This may bring some question to you or to some concern. You will be logging in through Georgia First Financials and selecting the core login on the Georgia First Financials website, and this will take you into PeopleSoft to be able to get to the PaymentWorks tile. Some of you may not currently have access to PeopleSoft or Georgia First Financials. So we have identified your security admin, and we have sent them a list to let them know that you will be needing access and you will be needing the BOR PaymentWorks role so that you can get to your tile. So they will be working in the near future to get you set up before we go live. But this is just the beginning. So once you're logged into PeopleSoft, you will see that you have two options to get to the PaymentWorks tile. You can be on the e-procurement purchasing screen or the payables operations screen. Either screen will allow you to see the PaymentWorks tile and to choose the tile. So once you have chosen the tile, you will be into PaymentWorks, and this is the home screen of PaymentWorks, the first thing you will see. And PaymentWorks has 4 tiles of their own: the Setup and Manage Supplier Portal tile, Messaging tile, and the Vendor Master Updates tile, along with the Dynamic Discounting tile. The most important for you as the initiator role will be the Vendor Master Updates tile. So this is where you will want to start. Okay, so before you go to initiate a request with a supplier to onboard them with PaymentWorks, we're going to suggest that they search for their supplier to make sure that they have not been onboarded with PaymentWorks before with the University System of Georgia. So your supplier may work with multiple institutions within the shared database, the 8 institutions that are going live with PaymentWorks. So your supplier very well could have been onboarded by another institution. So you will want to make sure that you search for the supplier before you send them an invitation. So I'm going to first show you how you should go in and search. So you will first select the Vendor Master Updates tile. And once you have selected Vendor Master Updates, the next screen that will come up will have tabs. And you will want to select the New Vendors tab. Once you're on the New Vendors screen, you will see at the top where it says Show. You will want it to say Onboardings. And you're going to get a list here of some filter results. We do suggest you use one of the first 3 to complete the search, but the most important would be the contact email. You will need the email address to initiate a request with a supplier, and so we would suggest that you search by the contact email before you send them an invitation. So let's say you go ahead and search by the email, and it comes up with no results are found, so you will need to invite the payee. Okay, so inviting the payee will again be on the same screen. You will go to the Vendor Master Updates tile, the New Vendors tab, and you'll see here at the top of the image, this is where you just search by the email, but if you come all the way to the bottom, there's the option to send an invitation. So you'll want to click Send Invitation. And once you have clicked Send Invitation, several fields will come up for the invitation, and this is where you will need to fill out regarding your vendor, your supplier. This information will be the same information you will need each time, so you will want to make sure that you collect this information from the supplier so that you can send them an invitation. You'll see at the top, the first piece of information you need is the company or the individual name. You need the contact email, and then you will need to verify the contact email. You'll need to put in a description of goods and services. This can be anything like computers, paint, food, just a brief description. And then you will need to put in your phone number. So this will be a phone number that we could reach you at if we had any questions regarding the invitation. And if you notice, these first few steps are all required, but the last portion, the personalized message, is not required. However, we do recommend that you use it to complete the invitation, and we're going to show you a sample invitation, and it will show you how this fits into the invitation. So you can type a personalized message, something as "Thank you for the paint for the history classroom," or something brief, but this will help remind the supplier of the service or the good they provided you at the institution. So once you've completed the invitation, you can select send. And once you select send, a box is going to come up saying that your invitation has been sent. Please note that all of our institutions will also have an institution approver. So you, as an initiator, will be creating the invitation, and once you create the invitation, it will go to an institution approver before it is actually sent to the supplier. We do realize that you may not be aware of who your institution approvers will be, but we will have those posted on the Georgia First Financial's website. There's going to be a section called PaymentWorks. This is where all of our job aids will be posted and the recordings for these sessions. And we will also have a list of institution approvers there. In case you ever have a question, you can direct back to them as well. Okay, so I do have a sample invitation here. This is what will be sent to the supplier when we are asking them to complete the registration. I'm going to read through it quickly. Just say, "Dear Jonathan's Jump House, Jason Beitzel has invited you to register as a new vendor to the University System of Georgia. Thank you for the jump houses for our Student Life Carnival." So that line, the third line, will be where your personalized message goes. And again, this will help remind the supplier the service or the good they provided you. It goes on to say, "In order for the University System of Georgia to establish you or your company as a payee or vendor, please click here to register on PaymentWorks, University System of Georgia's supplier portal. Please note the University System of Georgia includes the institutions listed here. If they have any question about which institution they could have worked with, they might need a list to refresh their memory. They can click here and look at the list of institutions." We do give them some hints here below. It says, "Before you begin the registration process, be sure to have the following information available." They will need a valid tax ID, either their employer identification number or their social security number. If they wish to receive ACH payments, they will need a copy of a voided check or a bank statement, and that does have to be uploaded into their registration when they are completing it. Then we tell them, if you have questions regarding billing, invoices, or payments, please contact the University System of Georgia directly. If you have questions regarding the PaymentWorks platform or specific aspects of the registration process, please email PaymentWorks. And we say thank you for your support on the University System of Georgia. Okay, so you have sent the invitation, and maybe it's been a day or two and you're wondering, where is my invitation at in the process? So you are going to have the ability to go back into your PaymentWorks account and review the invite status. So you will be able to see exactly where it is in the process. And I know some of you have got are used to contacting us at the Shared Services Center to ask where we are in the process or to get an update on the vendor. So you will now be able to go into PaymentWorks and see whose hands it is in. If you'll remember, you will be the initiator, so you will initiate the invitation. It will be sent to your institution approver for approval, and once they approve it, the registration email will be sent to the supplier. Once the supplier completes their registration, PaymentWorks will validate the information, and then it will come to the Shared Services Center for final approval before entry into PeopleSoft. Okay, so if we're looking to review the invite status, we will again be on the Vendor Master Update screen. We will select New Vendors. And once you're on the New Vendors tile or tab, you will have a list of suppliers that you have onboarded. This will only be your onboardings, will not be any others. So we have an example here. The onboard start date was 12/5/2019. It was updated 12/30/2019. The vendor name is Toyota, and we see that the invitation has been delivered, but we don't have a vendor account yet. They haven't set up their account, and they have not started their new vendor registration. So all we know at this point on this example is that the invitation was delivered. Okay, so you're going to have 3 columns here, and we're about to give you some definitions of the status that you will be able to see in each column. This may be something that you want to keep the presentation for. Once we send it out, you may want to keep it so you can reference back to know exactly what all of the statuses mean. But this example here, we have Ashley Watson Laundry. The onboard started 4/22/2018, and it was updated 4/22/2018. The invitation was clicked. The vendor account, she validated her email address, and she started her registration. So it's in progress, and you'll see that she's a little over halfway complete. And this can be a scenario, as I said, in the email that is sent to the supplier, we give them pieces of information they need to be able to complete the registration. Say she wanted ACH payment set up, but she didn't have a bank statement or a voided check on hand, she may have to come back to her registration. So this could be in progress for a few days while they gather that information. You don't know, but that may be something you can check up on to see if they will be able to complete it sometime soon. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some definitions of what we will see in these columns. So under the invitation status, there's going to be a status of pending approval. So this invitation is in queue to be reviewed. This will be by the institution approver. So if you see the pending approval status, your institution approver has not approved the request yet, and it's in queue to be reviewed. Or it was open, the vendor has opened the invitation email. Or it was clicked, the vendor has received the invitation email and they have clicked on the link to get started. It was rejected, so the buyer has rejected the invitation request. It was undeliverable, so the email address that was entered on the invitation was not correct, or somehow it went to the wrong place, so it's undeliverable. Or it was canceled, the invitation has been canceled. In the account column, you will see no account. The vendor has not used their invitation to create their account. Registered, the vendor account was created but not activated. Or the email was validated. The vendor has created and activated their account. And finally, in the registration status column, you'll see either the registration was not started, the vendor has not entered information on their registration, or it's in progress. The vendor has started entering the information but has not submitted it. This is like the example we saw with Ashley's setup. You'll still see the tile on the side showing you how far along they are in the process. It was submitted. The vendor has submitted their registration, or it was returned. This would be where the Shared Services Center has received the registration from the supplier, and maybe we realized that PaymentWorks wasn't able to validate a piece of information and we need it to be corrected, or we need more information. We would send it back to the supplier. So returned would be from the Shared Services Center. We have returned it to the supplier. Or it has been approved, so the Shared Services Center has approved entry. It was rejected, so the vendor has rejected their registration. Was complete. The vendor has been notified of their approval, the vendor record has been created, and the vendor number has been issued. You will see the vendor number under the new vendor registration tile or column as well. I'm going to show you an example of that in just a minute. And then it was processed. The registration has been processed and sent to the system for record. Okay, so in this example here, we have registration routing. The onboard start was 11/26/2019. It was updated 11/26/2019. The invitation was clicked. The vendor account, they validated their email, and it's complete. So they've completed their registration. And now you see their vendor number is 12349, and the tile is all the way over at 100%. So it is important for you to know that our vendor numbers will not be changing. All of the current suppliers that are in the shared database, the vendor numbers will be staying the same, and we will continue to add on as we are doing now. So you will have access to see the vendor registration here, the vendor number. So we've gone through the process and we've seen step by step how the initiator process will work. And we've talked about searching for the payee, and we've talked about reviewing your invite status. I want to turn over the presentation at this time to Abe, and he will give us a live demonstration in PaymentWorks of the process.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the steps of sending an invitation to a new vendor. And first, we'll start on the Georgia First Financials website, and that URL is right up here. It's usg.edu/GA-first-fin. Once you're on this page, you'll scroll down to the core user section and select Georgia First Financials. And once this page loads, you'll sign in to PeopleSoft with your credentials. All right. And I'm now going to jump over to our FPRE database. It's our test database because the PaymentWorks tile has not yet been added to production. All right, so from the drop down at the top of the page, we'll select e-procurement and purchasing. And here we see the PaymentWorks tile. All right, now that we are in PaymentWorks, we'll select the Vendor Master Updates tile. Next, we'll select the New Vendors tab, and we'll select Onboardings from the drop-down menu. So in this scenario, let's say that we have hired Krispy Kreme Donuts to cater our benefits fair. So we'll search for them by using the contact email, and I'm going to use a generic email for testing so that an email is not sent to a real address. Okay, and since no vendors were returned, that means that this vendor has not been set up yet. So now we'll go down to the bottom where it says send invitation. And here we'll enter the company name. We will enter the contact email. And we will enter the contact email once more to verify. So here it asks for a description of the goods and services. So we will put in donuts and coffee. And we will put in human resources for the Initiator department. And here we'll enter the phone number of the Initiator department. Here it asks for the reason for inviting a supplier. You can choose from product, service, or product and service. Since we purchased donuts and coffee, this would just be a product. And here in the personalized message field, we'll write our message. All right, and now that the form is complete, we'll select send. And here we get a pop-up notification letting us know that the invitation has been sent to the institution approver for approval before being sent to the vendor. And after clicking OK, we can now see the vendor, and we see the status. The invitation status is pending approval with the institution approver. And here's where you can track the status of the vendor's registration. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jesse.
Thank you, Abe. And at this time, I'm going to pass it to Allison so we can talk about help and troubleshooting.
Okay, so there's going to be two ways that you can request help. Anything that would be mainly PaymentWorks, there's a location in PaymentWorks where you can contact them, and it'll be at the top of your screen on the right-hand side of the corner. And you can click help, and then if you scroll all the way down to the bottom left, you'll see the Initiator help section. There's also, when you're searching your onboardings, there's a little video tutorial that you can click if you need, if you have any questions or need further assistance. How will you know when the supplier is connected? Y'all as initiators will receive an email from PaymentWorks when the integration process is completed and a vendor number is assigned. And you can also check on the status on the onboarding screen underneath this new vendor registration. It'll say complete, and then it'll have the assigned number. Jesse, next slide. If you receive an error when sending the payee invitation, and went too far.
I'm sorry, I had flipped it and it must not have changed. See?
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. An invitation that was previously sent to this email address. So this would be when you would contact SSC. You can only send one invitation to a supplier. You cannot send another one. So in instances like these, it'll probably be if another institution uses the same supplier. They will also have probably onboarded them. So we can look into that for y'all. And in order to do that, just place a ticket with us at 1usgsupport@usg.edu. If your payee did not receive the invite, verify that they've checked their spam folder because sometimes it'll go there. Initiators do have the ability to resend an invitation. And to resend one, you will have to click the status in the invitation column. And then at the bottom of the invitation detail screen, you can click the resend invitation button. If you entered the wrong email address, you can correct the resend in the resend invitation location. So you would click on the invitation status, then click on resend invitation, and you'd enter the correct email and then click send when you're finished. If your payee has not completed the forms, they will receive emails until the registration is complete or the reminders are canceled. So reminder email notifications are automatically generated. Do not resend an invitation unless the payee notifies you that they did not receive the initial email. So the first reminder will be in 3 days, the second reminder 7 days, the third reminder 14 days, the fourth reminder 21 days, and the fifth reminder 28 days. If you have not received your vendor number, you will receive your vendor number once the payee has been approved and sent to the ERP. So if you haven't received a vendor number yet, they would have had to fill everything out completely and correctly. It needs to be approved by y'all's approvers, and then it will also need to be approved by SSC once everything is validated. And I think it's 24 hours for banking to be verified. If it's a check payment, TIN and address gets verified immediately, so it shouldn't take too long for it to be brought into PeopleSoft Financials. And once that is brought in, then it'll bring the number over. This is also another situation. If it's been a few days and it hasn't been onboarded, then you would definitely contact us through the oneusgconnect@usg.edu email, and we'll create a ticket for it. If your payee will no longer be used, you're going to click on the invitation status. Then you will want to click the cancel reminders button, and then you want to confirm it by clicking OK.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, so we are finishing up here. So we walked you through the process and been able to give you a live demo, and also provided you with some help and troubleshooting points. But we want to make sure that you all are aware that we will be going live with PaymentWorks as our vendor onboarding program May 29th. So that is only a few short weeks away. So everything after May 29th will be onboarded through PaymentWorks. We are compiling a communication now that will be sent to all of you, letting you know when our last day to receive the W-9 and supplier information will be. This will allow us to have a smooth transition to PaymentWorks so that we can begin onboarding with PaymentWorks. So I do feel that it's important for us to mention now that we will be onboarding through PaymentWorks all of our new suppliers as well as our current suppliers. So if you are currently working with a supplier and their information in PeopleSoft is correct, you do not have to have them onboarded necessarily to make a payment to them. You'll still be able to pay them. But we do suggest beginning May 29th, any supplier that you work with for the first time post PaymentWorks go live, we do ask that you send them an invitation and allow them to go ahead and complete a registration with PaymentWorks. Once they enter their taxpayer identification number and it matches with our PeopleSoft, we will be able to just connect the records. So it will not create a duplicate, but it will connect the records. So any supplier that you work with after May 29th, we will need to make sure that we have an invitation sent to them. This will be beneficial for the supplier as well, so that they can keep up with different things such as their invoices and payments in PaymentWorks. So they will be able to view their statuses there as well. It is also important that we note that we did send out a mass email last week between 17,000 and 18,000 emails to all of our current active suppliers that had emails on file. We did send an email letting them know that PaymentWorks were coming so that they would not be surprised when you asked them to create a PaymentWorks account. Now, this email we sent to them is not the registration email that you saw in this slideshow. It was just an email giving them a heads up about the change as far as onboarding with the University System of Georgia shared suppliers. So this was just a heads up to them. You will still need to make sure you send an invitation to them once we go live on May the 29th. So at this time, I do want to check our chat box to see if we have any questions that are coming in. If we don't have any that have already come in, if you have questions, go ahead and type them now. So we do have some here.
Yeah, we have one from Addie Edwards saying that each supplier has multiple email addresses. That's correct. I know that a lot of them do. But they will only be able to set up one account with the main email address. So we're recommending that they have like a generic type email address. I know some of the smaller businesses don't. They'll have like, for example, Addie at staples.com or something. But it would be better in the long run if they had a more generic email. That way they can just log in as the company, but there is also the option of adding more contacts to it, but you would have to use the main email, if that makes sense. And following up with the person and the phone number, it'll likely change over a period of time. This is true, and we're going to try to eliminate that by trying to say that it's better if it's a generic email. Duck, go away. What if a supplier is not goods or services, such as a student needing an award that is not done through financial aid? Wendy, they'll do the same way. I know that sometimes y'all do it that way, and we put them into share, so they will you can and send them an invitation through PaymentWorks. They'll need an email address and their TIN. And their, address and everything and all their information, and it'll be just like it is going through us. The international vendors, yes, it goes. It's the exact same process. They have an option to do either W-9 or W-8 BEN through the PaymentWorks, and so you can do a international vendor just as you would a normal vendor. Good question, Nicholas. Does this roll over year to year or once a year, even if nothing changes with that person/company? Most of mine will be individuals because they provide a service, officiated scorekeeper, replay, etc., and do so every year. Jason, did you want to?
Yeah, sure. So Nicholas, the answer to the question is they still just need to onboard one time in PaymentWorks, but you should know that once they're set up as a share supplier in Georgia First Financials, we do run a vendor inactivation process every year. It checks to see if there's any transactions against a particular supplier over the past 18 months. As long as that supplier has a transaction, then we won't inactivate that vendor in PeopleSoft. But if they don't have any transactions over the past 18 months, we will still inactivate them in PeopleSoft, but they won't have to do anything else in PaymentWorks.
Thank you, Jason.
Sure.
So I see Sherry's question here. Is PaymentWorks system where we will generate payment requests after they have been approved? And I believe, Sherry, you also asked, will there be copies of this presentation available for future reference? So your generation change. This will still be where just the supplier goes to have their registration completed, but you will continue to do your payment request in your system. So this will just be the integration between the supplier information form and PeopleSoft, but your payment request will not be changed. And the question about the presentation, yes, we will be sending out the recording and the presentation to everyone following the meeting. We will also have things posted on the Georgia First Financial website for future reference. And Jeanette, you asked, would we do this if we need to pay prospective faculty who come to campus for open search positions that we currently have fill out the travel reimbursement form and supplier authorization form? Yes, this will not change either. We know we currently enter supplier information forms for faculty members that are from other schools that are coming to provide you with services and possibly be one of your faculty members. So they will still need to go through the onboarding process as well so that we can pay them through PeopleSoft. And Patricia, I see you're asking a question. So Xerox and Rico will also have to register. I believe you're alluding to the fact that they're a large company. Like we have Staples and Dell and all of those large companies, they will. Now, if there's if they're in Marketplace or any of that, that will be going through ITS still, so that will not change.
And I guess just to piggyback, Jesse, off that, the reason that Xerox and Rico and Dell and Staples and these other big suppliers need to go through PaymentWorks at least just one time to get them registered is so PaymentWorks will reimburse any vendor fraud. We know that all of the institutions make a lot of payments to these suppliers, so it's really important, especially for suppliers your institution spending a lot of money on, that we get them registered on PaymentWorks. So if there's fraud down the road, that would be covered in the future.
Jason, I'm sorry, did you answer the question below about Rico also? I think Josh was piggybacking.
I didn't. Thank you. Yes, that's fine to have multiple pay to. So once a supplier's connected, they can add multiple addresses, multiple locations, multiple contacts. There's really not a limit in PaymentWorks. So if they had 5 different pay addresses they wanted to remit to, that's not a problem at all. They do set up one at first when they onboard the first time, but then once they're connected, they can do multiple updates at any point in time they still will be validated by PaymentWorks, and they still will go through Shared Services Center for approval, but that's not going to stop them from adding more contacts, more addresses, more phone numbers in the future. Or if they just need to change something, right? If they need to change the withholding from yes to no, they can do that at any time in PaymentWorks too, and that'll feed over.
And Jason, can you answer Joyce's question as well? I know this year we did, did a supplier authorization form for the Phi Eta Sigma awards. Can you answer that one?
I would have to take that one back, I think, Joyce. We probably need to discuss that one a little bit more to figure out the best process for that. I know I saw a couple questions about like one-time payments and single pay. Those will still continue to go through Shared Services Center. They won't go through PaymentWorks. So if you did have a one-time payment for a speaker or something like that at a conference, then those would still be set up through Shared Services Center, at least for now. PaymentWorks does have some functionality to do one-time payments, but they don't do the validation as well as they do if somebody's registering as a full supplier. And so for right now, we're going to proceed as we do currently with one-time suppliers. But let us take that back about the award scholarships, and we'll get back to you, Joyce, on that.
I also wanted to say that there, that y'all have the ability to do single pay through y'all's institution. And then there's also, you can pay your students through the Share B part. And just keep those in mind too, because I think sometimes they get forgotten about, and not everything requires going through Share.
Right, the B business units.
Yeah, the B business units.
Yeah.
Deandra, what if a vendor has different departments like the NAFSA? Do we need to put them all different departments in the system? You can only have one supplier with one TIN. So if they have the same TIN, it would just be different locations, address locations or payment locations, one or the other. So they'll have to sign in through the one email, and they'll have to be added that way. Beth, will we have to submit request forms again to the vendors we already have? If so, will you provide a list of who we need to send to? So our recommendation on this is, as you go about paying the vendors that you already have, just send out initiations to them, and that way they can be crossed over into PaymentWorks. Now, you don't have to do that. You can still pay them if their information is correct, but you do not have PaymentWorks I'm losing my words, I'm sorry. They validate everything, and so if there is a fraudulent thing that happens and it has not been validated through PaymentWorks, then it won't cover that supplier or your institution. So we're recommending that whenever you make another payment to whomever the supplier is, to go ahead and send out an initiation, and we can pull them into the PaymentWorks database also.
Yeah. And I guess, Allison, on top of that, we'll also have queries in PeopleSoft Financials. We'll have public board queries. So you'll be able, in addition to how Abe showed you how you can search for a supplier, they'll have queries out there that you can run that'll let you know who has been set up in PaymentWorks and who hasn't. I guess one more point of clarification on that is suppliers only have to be set up one time for Share institutions. We know we have 8 institutions now using a Share supplier. So for Staples, for example, they would only need to be set up by one institution. Once they're set up in PaymentWorks, all 8 institutions can use that Staples vendor with the confidence of knowing that if there's any vendor fraud, it is going to be covered by PaymentWorks. So it's not one vendor per institution, it's one vendor per system.
R. Sullivan, I see your question about will there be a PowerPoint or manual sent out on this. So like we said, we will be sending the recordings and the PowerPoint presentation, but we will also have job aids that will be posted for all of these processes, and that will be located on the Georgia First Financial website under PaymentWorks. We have written them. We're just in the process of getting them uploaded now. So that should be available to you shortly.
And then we've got Kara that says, will this also be implemented with foundation account suppliers for payments, or are their supplier vendor process stay the same? If it's in share, it's the same concept. They'll have to go through PaymentWorks to be validated. If you use a different way to do it, then you can continue on doing it that way. Addie Edwards, the problem is there's no simple way for 8 institutions to get together and decide who will reach out to whom to get suppliers set up. Seems like there must be a better way for current suppliers.
Yeah, agreed, Addie. It's not the simplest process, but we will have queries out there. And so it would really be as quickly as you're making payments to suppliers. If you see that they're not set up, it's not a hard process, but it will take a little bit of time. But once these suppliers are set up, every school will have that confidence that if there is vendor fraud, that it's covered by PaymentWorks. So we are still working with PaymentWorks to simplify the solution. We know that there's a lot of shared suppliers out there, but we're definitely working on that. But in the meantime, I would just encourage each institution to continue to send out those invitations. Just check and see if that supplier's set up. If not, go ahead and send it, and it won't hurt anything to send it and get them onboarded, and that'll just kind of make things a little easier for everybody.
Okay, so we have come to the end of our questions for now. If you have other questions, please continue to enter them. We will stay on a few more minutes to enter, but we do understand some of you may be getting back to your other routine and activities. So if you don't have any other questions, you're welcome to go. Thank you for attending. We do appreciate you attending and hope that you look forward to PaymentWorks as much as we do. I do see another question has come through. What did you mean by the single pay option? Linda, I know Allison and Jason, I believe, both spoke to this. So at times, the Shared Services Center has to set up a supplier as a one-time supplier so that we can allow them to receive a one-time payment. But your institution has a single pay option in the B database. I'm sure your accounts payable department can help you with this as well if you have questions regarding how to or what you can pay through single pay. Allison, do you have more that you want to say towards this?
I know that there are some single pay. If you have to make a payment that doesn't necessarily have to be tracked, like for example, it doesn't need a 1099 or something, and you're just going to pay that person one time, that you can use it. But like Jesse said, it would probably be better if you talk to your accounts payable department just to make sure what rules y'all have in reference to that. And Beth, your question was, will we have to submit a request form again to the vendors we already have? If so, will you provide the list? And we just touched on that, but no. Well, hold on, let me look at it again. You will have to send them a request through PaymentWorks. You don't absolutely have to, because if your information is already correct in PeopleSoft, you can continue to pay them. But it is not guaranteed. PaymentWorks will not cover it if fraud happens on those suppliers. So the institution will be out of the fraudulent charges if that happens. So we recommend that you send an initiation to any supplier that already exists as you go, using them or paying them. It's not going to hurt anything. Just send it to their email and they can set up their account, and that way we can add them to PaymentWorks that way. Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay, we don't have any other questions at this time, but we will watch it for a few more minutes to make sure we get everyone's question answered. Again, thank you for attending, and we will be in touch with you all soon.
Thank you for the questions, Beth.